Hi, Lisa Marie of Global One Health. In this video, I want to start to address the Turkish Get-Up. The Get-Up is a fantastic exercise to build strength. However, it is very complex. I've decided to put the exercise into a few videos to break it apart in a lot of detail since there are a lot of very subtle components to talk about, and I don't want the video to be excessively long. So I'm going to, again, break it down. Now, when doing the Get-Up, while it's traditionally done with a kettlebell, it can be done with a dumbbell. However, when you're first learning the Get-Up and any loaded exercise, you really want to learn the mechanics in body weight. So in Strong First, they refer to that as a naked Get-Up, and that is doing the Get-Up just body weight with no added weight in your hand. It's very important that you get the sequential pattern of the Get-Up down and really own each component or phase, I'll refer to it as, each of the steps that you're going to learn in the Get-Up to get from the ground to the standing position and then back down to the ground in the starting position, which is referred to as the reverse Get-Up from standing to ground. So I'm just going to break down a couple components in each of the videos, but we're going to start from the beginning. So the Get-Up is done lying in a supine position, and I'll change in different angles so that you can see. So one leg is bent, one leg is extended straight in the ground. The leg that's in the air, or that's bent, that arm is going to be vertically positioned in the air. The other arm is going to be extended straight down, and we'll talk about that position in a moment. So this is what the position looks like from this perspective. So in this essence, I would have the weight would always be in the arm that is vertical. So you want to start in your mind to think about it. So I like to hold that hand in a fist as if I am holding the weight, just training that neuromuscular patterning that I'm going to be holding something. So to show you what that would look like in the other side so that you can see both perspectives, now I've just switched weights. So now my right arm would be holding the weight, and I have the arm and leg extended out. So from a side view, or head-on view actually, right, and from this perspective, right, so you can kind of get a sense that my legs are not parallel but on an angle. And the relationship of your arm in your setup is critically important for that first move of the Get-Up. And then we'll talk about that why as well. So my arm that's extended on the ground, I like to say is about 45 degrees out from the side. So if this is 90 degrees, my arm extended directly out, that's too high, and I definitely don't want my arm right next to my body. So the position of the setup of the arm is critically important for the Get-Up. And my legs, you can see from this angle, are not parallel, also very important. They're kind of on an A line or also on a diagonal line. So I'll just bring that leg straight down to the ground from that position, just so that you can see perspective of the relationship of the limbs and how you want to start. So the next thing is the Turkish Get-Up, you're starting in the ground. So you have a tremendous amount of force production that you can use against the ground to actually do the getting up movement. So it is not a sit-up. You don't want to sit directly up like you're doing a sit-up. That is not the classic form. It is more of a rolling towards the elbow. But you don't just want to focus on getting up, right? And I've talked a lot about this, about that grounding concept. The more you can think about pushing into the ground or pushing against it, you're going to create more muscle activation and use the ground as resistance to execute the movements more properly. So in this starting position, I'm not lying here passively. That is, especially if you're looking to do a Get-Up with a heavier weight as your goal down the road, don't wait until the weight is heavy to start to think about creating the tension, right? You want to learn and get that neuromuscular recruitment pattern in the body and in the brain right from the beginning, even in these naked Get-Ups, as I referred to in Strong First, right? That's doing a Get-Up without weight in your hand. So this leg is not passive, it's pushing into the ground. You'll feel I'm actually pushing the back of my heel into the ground. That's going to give me glute activation of the extended leg. Now that's going to be important. Now the other leg, that foot, is also pushing into the ground because that's going to be the leverage I'm going to use to initiate the first movement of the Get-Up. I want to make sure I'm packed in my shoulders. So when I have the weight here, I want to anchor down, and I'll show you on both sides, right, and into the floor. But this hand is also pushing, right? There's a connection, especially of the elbow. That elbow is a critically important component in execution of the Get-Up in the first and last movement of the Get-Up. So I'm really thinking about my elbow into the ground, which is going to fire my lat complex on that side. So the very first movement, once I think about pushing into the ground, is I want to get up over onto the elbow, right? So what I want to think about are a couple things. Is the first moment I want to think about, of course, I'm already engaging my core to start. I'm pressing feet, heels, hands, elbow into the ground as I think about this hip. So I want to kind of, you'll see as it rotates to the screen, I drive the heel of the bent leg into the ground till I feel my glutes contract isometrically, and I think about driving that hip bone up. Then I push this elbow is also critically important. I want to think about not just pushing the elbow into the ground, but in the first movement, as I want to think about rolling towards the elbow, I think about pulling the elbow into my body or my rib cage. So once I've kind of got that isometric contraction, the driving through the hip bone is going to already get a hip rotation, right? My pelvis is starting to rotate. So now I'm involving my obliques. So I got my isometric activation of my core and my glutes. Now I start to get the added component of the obliques. I push the elbow into the ground and down into me. So I'm pulling my elbow into me to get me up into the elbow. Now, without the weight in the hand, what I was taught in the Strong First certification is that you can do a check, right? So if you'll see in the screen here, my elbow is already directly lined under my shoulder. Now I've done a tremendous amount of get-ups already at this point in time in my life, so I know exactly where to put my arm. But I want to show you how important the setup is. And this is why I talk about this and what these videos are for. If I put my arm too far to the side, right, so I'll show you here. As I roll, now my elbow is going to be further away from my shoulder and not directly underneath it. So that's going to set me up for a lot more added stress on the shoulder joint structure and on the capsule because the bone is not, right, the humerus, the upper arm bone, is not vertically stacked under putting my elbow directly under my shoulder, and that's going to put excess load here. And remember, it's this side of the shoulder girdle on the body that's helping support the weight in that arm that's in the air. So if the arm is too far aside, it's going to end up placing the elbow too far away from the vertical line of the shoulder. So keep that in mind. Now, if I bring that arm in all the way next to my body, much harder to get up. Now, my elbow is way too close. Again, excess stress. You can't even properly get up if you had a heavy weight there. So the relationship or position that you place that arm in from the ground is critically important. That'll either set you up for success or not in getting up, right? So knowing where that arm is positioned, I drive that elbow. Even if the hand comes up, it's the elbow that pushes down, right? So I drive my foot down, activate the glute. You'll see that hip rotation. I want to roll towards that elbow. And now you see that elbow is directly stacked under my shoulder. From here, you want to think about pushing again into the ground. So it's not about, yes, you want to come up to the hand, but the more you push down, it helps to support the structure to get up. So I want to push that hand into the ground, and I'm trying to stay corkscrewed and packed. And I'll show you that from a different angle. But from the elbow, to get to the hand, I want to push down into the hand and think about corkscrewing that arm and the shoulder more to get into this position. Okay, so that's how you want to think about it. Now, a great drill that you can do is to do the transition from A to B, B to C, instead of trying to get to the get up from beginning to end in one swoop. I don't recommend learning it that way. So if you're just getting from the elbow to the hand, practice going in the reverse pattern from there, controlling yourself back down to your elbow, and then controlling yourself back down to the ground. So that's how I'm going to teach it a little bit, segueing between two different styles, but that is a great way to learn the get-up, is just to practice going from one position in the get-up to the very next one, and then going back down in reverse. So you're practicing that pattern rather than trying to get overwhelmed learning it all in one swoop, which I don't recommend, and I don't do with my clients either, unless they have experience and they know the get-up patterning already. That's a different story, right? So I'm engaging everything isometrically. I'm pushing into the ground. I want to roll through that hip a little bit. Think about pressing down in the elbow into the ground and into me. Then I push the hand into the ground and corkscrew. Notice I'm never unpacking, so that's critically important. You want to avoid going into that first movement this way and then trying to find it once you're on the elbow. Because under a heavy load, if you're going for a PR or a heavier weight in your get-up, that could not be ideal in the load that you're putting on that shoulder. And that's also one of the prerequisites when you're testing out in the certification, is that you're not allowing that shoulder to unpack, as they call it, right? That's critically important because that's your support, again, for the weight that's overhead. So you want to stay packed in both shoulders, pushed into the ground, and come down. So by the time I come up, there's no, as I call it, hiccup of the shoulder. Same thing, I often see people will do this and then try to fix it at the top. You want to try to never unpack the shoulder, ideally, is your goal, right? That's the basic premise. From here, I'm going to push into the ground and stay connected under here. And then when I go back down to the elbow, I want to stay actively working through here. So from a back perspective of what it's going to look like, so you can see from this angle, I'll switch sides, right? So I've got my arm pushing into the ground, my foot. Now this side, if you can see, again, I don't want that shoulder to come off the ground. It's packed and corkscrewed and wedged in because that's going to be the side that's going to be supporting the bell down the road. So I'm pushing into the ground. Activation of the glute is going to give that hip drive up. I drive through, this perspective is going to show you a little bit better angle of the back perspective of that loaded shoulder. I come up here, right? Now I'm very much engaged to the lat serratus and lateral structure under the armpit. I push the ground away, and now you can, you're allowed to adjust the hand at the end position there. So I can adjust my hand as I'm transitioning, but once I'm in position, I'm not supposed to then change, right? So going back down to the ground, I'll show you that and talk about that principle one more time. So I'm in my position, I roll over to my elbow, staying lifted in through here. Then I want to really think about pushing my hand into the ground and staying and like corkscrewing deeper into that posterior side of the lateral ribs. Then when I go down, it's not going down in energy. I don't want to collapse down. And again, I don't want to lose the packing. So once I'm kind of really fired up under here, I want to keep that connection of thinking about staying supported on those bottom ribs as I come down to the elbow. Now, to talk more specifically how to get from the elbow to the ground, it's the opposite of what you do to roll up. So if I'm going to push the elbow into the ground and pull into me to come up, when I go down, this elbow is going to push not just into the ground, it's going to push away from me in that direction. So here's my position. As I go down, I'll try to do extra slow motion. You're going to see my elbow is pushing down and out away from my ribs. Super slow motion. And then it's going to prevent that shoulder from unpacking, which would look like this. Right? You don't want to sink into the ribs and just kind of collapse to the ground, because then the structure is not supporting the kettlebell weight that's going to be over your head. So from there, maintaining that very, very strong isometric contraction through that loaded downside of the get-up, and pushing my elbow into the ground and away from me. The slower I go, I can really work on my control, keeping that down. So that's just how to get from the ground to the elbow, elbow to the hand, and back down. So that's I think, a really great way to practice the get-up, is to practice the transitions in segments, going just from one to the next movement. Own that, or maybe one or two at a time in sequential pattern, and then go back down to the ground, so that you're really practicing each section or segment of the get-up and its reverse pattern, and then you just keep layering on, which is what I'm going to do with these videos, is just keep adding on another step or segment or two and integrating it and then putting it together. And then at the end of this Turkish Get-Up series, you will have all the necessary components to start from the ground, get to the full standing position, and back down in the reverse get-up to the floor where you start. So that is just how to get, again, the Turkish get-up from the ground to the elbow to the hand and back. Give that a try, but again, please, please do practice it naked, without weight, right? The naked get-up is body weight, and it's a fantastic body weight exercise that you can do on recovery days, not using a weight at all once you have that sequential pattern down, because it is an overall body exercise to build strength throughout all of the structures.